Mic check.
Okay, I think we're going to get started here. I am very happy this morning to introduce three gentlemen from the city of Sioux Falls that are going to speak to us today. We have Eric Gage, and he's a Brandon Valley graduate, a South Dakota native, and he's no stranger to the veterans community, as he joined the South Dakota Air National Guard following high school. He served over a decade and worked at the D.C. headquarters before returning to South Dakota a few years ago to raise his family. He oversees the Veterans Community Project of Sioux Falls and couldn't think of a more perfect organization to work for. We also have Jason Bieber, not Justin, but Jason. Jason is a senior planner with the Planning and Development Services Department for Sioux Falls. He's been with the city for 14 years. He's from Aberdeen, and he graduated from SDSU with a master's degree in geography. Shannon Verhey is a city engineer with the City of Sioux Falls, where he has worked the last 22 years. Shannon's team helps to manage the construction program for the city. He's from Lennox, South Dakota, and he has an engineering degree from SDSU. So we're very happy to welcome these three gentlemen this morning.
So first off, I want to say thanks a lot for having us here. It's kind of fun to do these talks, especially with, we can describe kind of the project from where it started, and then we get Eric here who does probably the majority of it, and actually the one you probably want to hear from more. Really talks about Veterans Community Project, how they came about, and then actually at the end we'll transition into where they're at with Sioux Falls and actually some of their other projects throughout the city, or excuse me, throughout the country. So we're going to start with Eric, and he's going to kind of go through what Veterans Community Project is, and then myself and Shannon will take over and kind of talk about how this idea came about for Veterans Community Project in Sioux Falls, where we found property for that, and really what our investment was from a Sioux Falls perspective to get Veterans Community Project up and running and get the boots on the ground. So go ahead, Eric.
Well, thanks. So every time I speak with these gentlemen, I learn a new piece about their background, so that's fun for me. Like you said, my name is Eric Gage. I am the Executive Director for Veterans Community Project of Sioux Falls. And I started this role back this summer in June, and we have some exciting updates later in the presentation. But first, like Jason said, we'll talk about what VCP is and why VCP is. So we'll start with the problem. There's more than 37,000 homeless veterans on the street in America right now. This number is from 2018. Last weekend, we did the PIT count, which is the point-in-time count, which is where a group of well-trained professionals goes out into the community and recounts all the homeless people in our community. And then from that information, we can deduct how many veterans are on our streets. It's a bigger problem than we realize here in South Dakota because, our weather, people take shelter wherever they can and are a little out of sight. 40% of homeless veterans live in places not suitable for human habitation. So bridge underpasses, abandoned buildings, city facilities that might not be secured, entryways, stuff like that. And 1.5 million veterans live in poverty. So that number is one that most people don't think about. So if you're in poverty, that means you're below the poverty line, and I'm not an economics major, I'm sure you guys are a little better at that than I am, but basically, folks are so close to being broke that one thing happens, one medical bill, one traffic accident, one anything, they no longer have enough funds to overcome it, and they are at risk of joining the homeless population. The veterans specifically in poverty in our region is actually alarmingly high. It's actually higher than it is in most other parts of the country. 20 veterans a day die on their battlefield, which is in their own heads. And they lose that battle to suicide. So kind of a downer of a topic to start off with, but the interesting thing about that 20 is 16 of them are not engaged in any sort of veteran-related support systems. So they aren't enrolled in VA care. They are not active in their local VFW or Legion. They have no interaction with any kind of veteran support structures, either social or professional. So here's the solution that we've come up with. Innovate traditional housing and case management, trusted active partnerships with local support services, and meaningful ways for the community to connect with veterans and veterans to connect with the community. So, Veterans Community Project. Our mission is veterans housing veterans armed with the strength and support of the community. We chose those words very carefully. We cannot do what we do without the community. And we see that support as you arming us to take this hill. We get a little colloquial, and as our marketing director likes to say, we G.I. Joe it up a bit, which is a nice way of saying we realize for those that are living this life right now or at risk of it, it is a battle. So what do? We build tiny houses, and that's just a part of it. About 6 years ago in Kansas City, Missouri, a group of veterans who all volunteered or worked with veterans in their community in different ways came together where all good stories start, in a very dark and dingy, seedy dive bar, where a group of them who had been working out in the community that day were complaining about the system and the problem. And the bartender looked at them and told them they need to stop their belly aching and go talk to those guys over there because they're talking about the same thing. So in that bar that night, Veterans Community Project was born. And our founders came up with the concept of, well, you know what? These guys aren't housed. Let's house them. Let's find a way to get a roof over their heads so we can work with them to fix the things that need fixing for them. Not the things we think they need help with, but the things they think they need help with. So the original 15 houses, which are the ones in the front left corner, were built over time. This 5-acre plot of land in a not so nice neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri, became a village of 49 tiny houses and a village center. That was where it started. It's continued to grow and evolve since then. We focus on housing with dignity. This is a picture of one of our first residents in Kansas City and his dog in front of his house. He came to our village after, not because of any underlying mental health issue, but because of underlying poverty. His home burned down because the building was mistaken by a gang for a different person's residence. And they burned his house down because they thought they were going after somebody else. It was down the street from the village. He wandered into the build site. Our vice president of expansion, who was running the Bobcat that day, almost ran him over because he's wandered into the build site. And he's 92 years old when he moved in. We focus on fully functional kitchens, bathrooms, and living spaces, furnished with new furniture, appliances, and household goods, which become the personal property of each veteran upon completing the program. So once a person's been identified, screened, prepped, they move in. Everything in that house is brand new. Everything they need to survive. Everything they need to thrive and live in dignity. And we'll get into a little bit more of our program later on, but upon completion of the program, they can take everything with them within those walls, including the refrigerator, the bed, the dishes, the coffee pot, everything. It comes stocked with 2 weeks worth of food. The design of the house is designed with those that are struggling with post-traumatic stress. So where the bed is located, you can see every point of egress. You can see every point of attack. You can put your back against that wall and decompress. And after an individual resides in our facility it can vary from individuals, sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple weeks. But you can see their shoulders come down. You can see the fight or flight response come down, and they can relax and start to focus on what got them there. They don't have to worry solely about survival anymore. So here's our 5 supports. We don't assume anybody needs anything. We don't try to cram every individual into the same model. We don't assume everybody needs mental health services. We don't assume everybody needs financial training. We don't assume everybody needs mental health counseling or addiction services. We have 5 measures that every person is assessed on, and goals are set accordingly. If a person is identified that one of the things that helped get them there is alcoholism, well, guess what? that's one of the things we work on with them. Their case manager identifies AA or whatever that program is that best fits them. We are not a dry facility. If somebody ends up in our village because of financial reasons, they have no addiction, and they spend all day roofing houses for a job, I'm not going to tell them they can't have a beer after work. It's their home. That's not in their care plan. We focus a lot on respect of your neighbor because, that's his burden, but that's part of treating them with dignity as an adult, as a brother, as a sister. We've all been through a shared experience, and we want to treat everybody with dignity. And we work towards that with these 5 pillars. Some stats. It basically comes down to our program shows success in a way that is uncommon in transitional housing programs, which is legally what we are. Anybody have a guess on what the desired success rate for a traditional housing program to qualify for federal funding? Not the action, not the okay, not the good, but the sought after goal. The gold star. 40% is what they strive for. Few reach it. Our success rate is 85%. Our strived is 98%. We'll get closer every year. We just get better at it. Because our program isn't based on, a lot of programs you'll see are based around faith or around addiction or around something specific. And they try to find people that fit their model and shoehorn them into it. Well, for us, the program is built for the individual, with the individual, and that's what helps them be successful. All right. In addition, we do what's called outreach services. It's a team of very resourceful individuals that work out in the community. They find the people that need our services. They find them either on the street or in a shelter. Not everybody we serve ends up in our village. Some folks just need help with a power bill. Some folks need help accessing mental health care. Some folks need help getting a discharge upgrade so they can access VA health care. All these things we aid in lining up. So our tiny village, the thing we always talk about and the thing we're excited about is less than half of what we do. Our outreach case managers really do a lot of good for a lot more people. So the outreach office in Kansas City, which is our headquarters, our first village, these are actually outdated numbers. I gotta get you some new ones. This young lady, she is tiny. She is shorter than I am. She is minuscule. She goes and wanders homeless camps by herself. She has never felt in danger. The people in those camps know her. They point people out that think might need her help. 3,620 people wandered into the outreach center. There was a record 2 weeks ago. I was on a call with my counterpart in Kansas City. 200 people utilized the outreach center in 1 week. Walked into the outreach center because they needed help with something that their financial situation or something was in the way of them doing it themselves. So our outreach staff are not mental health professionals. They're not career counselors. They're not addiction service folks. They're just people that care. They're people we've trained to look out for things, to work on things. But, for example, our outreach staff is made up of college kids who care, an amateur hockey player who is beloved by the people we serve. But they're empathetic, they listen, and they're really good at looking stuff up and helping you do paperwork to get over things. They also have a very well-established book of resources to help them do that. At VCP, we don't let a bureaucracy or a structure or this is how we've always do it get in the way. If a person needs a cane and the program that provides canes isn't working for them, well, we just we'd load them up in the car and we'd drive down to the cane store and we'd buy a cane. It's kind of a rudimentary example, but we don't let anything get in the way of serving the people that we need to serve. Some basic impact. The village in Kansas City, like I mentioned, is in a very not nice part of town. It used to be an even worse part of town. The village is actually bringing up the neighborhood. People come to the village. It is not just a home for the people that live there and the staff that work there, but it's ran by volunteers. They do everything to help. Everything we do, everything we build. Our staff isn't there to do things. Our staff is there to manage volunteers that do things. More stats. VCP is in Kansas City. The Chiefs are playing today for a spot in the Super Bowl. My inbox is exploding, so of course Chiefs had to make the slide deck. It's a big deal for some people. I make fun of them greatly. It'll be a rough Monday if they don't do well today. Was it yesterday? It's today. Yeah. Oh.
Oh, good, there's still hope.
There's still hope. There's still hope. I took my cell phone out of my pocket and set it aside because there's the smack talk that my colleagues are talking right now. All right, back to the mission. Our dream, to end veteran homelessness, reduce veteran suicide, and transform veteran services everywhere. We're disruptors. We don't do things the way normally things are done. Our model is exactly the opposite of the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration has rules and bureaucracy and laws that they have to follow. All warranted. They are looking at the problem on scale. We are looking at the problem at the individual level, at the street level. The bureaucracy to decide who gets served, the only hurdle a case manager has to come up against is me. And I'm a pushover. If there's a new thing they want to do that a person needs that they want to try, my question will be, well, did you do your research? And of course they will have, because that's what we do. And then my next question will be like, we'll figure out how much it'll cost, so I know how much to go fundraise to do it. And because we do things differently, the community latches onto it because we can show them, your dollars went to do this for this person on this date. Because we can make real change in a real person's life like that. All right.
Me now.
Me, you. I think so.
All right. I got it. Hello? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah, Jason doesn't wander as much as I do. He should be okay with a mic that has a cord.
Of course, we have to tag not to make it interesting.
That makes it fun.
Let me help you here.
You working?
They'll turn it on.
Okay.
Does it work? All right, here we go. Well, thanks, Eric, for kind of giving us a little bit idea of what Veterans Community Project is. What me and Shannon are going to do now is really talk about how this idea kind of came about and really how we kind of partnered with VCP to actually make this thing a reality in Sioux Falls, and you'll see that with some of the later pictures that we have. So this is kind of a rendering that was done or is done for the Sioux Falls Sioux Falls Veterans Community Project. You can kind of get an idea what the village is going to look like, and we'll actually take you through that site as we go forward within this presentation. This is what our administration calls One Sioux Falls, right? This is our framework that we work towards and our biggest initiatives. One of them, as you can see on there, is accessible housing. And that's one of the mayor's big things that he wants to accomplish with his last, well, 3.5 years now. But one of the problems that he feels Sioux Falls has is housing options for everyone, not just homeless people, workforce housing, but housing for everybody. So as part of that, that's one of the biggest initiatives, and that's kind of how this project came about. One of the great things that me and Shannon were a part of is what was called the Onward Leadership Program. This was a program designed by the mayor and was partnered with the USD Beacom School of Business. One of the big things he found out when he came here, there wasn't really a leadership program for City of Sioux Falls employees, and we were fortunate enough, along with 13 other people, to be part of the inaugural class for Onward, the Onward Leadership Program. I believe they just graduated their fourth class, so that they do. And really, it's a way for emerging city leaders to get some additional training and start working together with each other instead of in our silos where the engineers work with the engineers, the planners work with the planners, and so on and so forth. So our team was lucky enough to have collaboration from engineering with Shannon, myself from the planning department. We actually, at that time, it was Lieutenant Toom, but Chief Toom was on our team now. We had a gentleman from the legislative, so that works with the council on our team. And then also, unfortunately, we had an attorney, which we always have, and they like to put wrenches in that. I hope there's no attorneys in here, but so as you can see, we kind of had, which was great of our team, I think, is we had somebody from all these different departments within the city, and we actually needed everyone in every department to really make this idea a reality. So as part of that, everybody had to come up with an idea, a big project that we would get together in these teams and work on. Our team's project was to end idea to help our homeless population in Sioux Falls. And it really started off not with Veterans Community Project. It really started off as just an idea of, let's do a feasibility study. Is there enough homeless veterans in Sioux Falls? Is it something the city can help with, and how do we help, or how do we do that? So as I indicated, need in Sioux Falls, could we find a location? That's the other aspect, right? You need land to be able to do something that VCP did in Kansas City. Is there land available that the city could help get to be able to find a location for some sort of transitional housing program for veterans? Can it be sustainable? That's the other issue that we kind of ran up and get in hurdles. What's the city's, what is our role in that? Do we find the land? Do we partner with another organization, or is that something the city takes over and we pay for it every year? And so that was another big aspect of what we wanted to do. And then, like I indicated, what's our role in this with city government? So as we were doing this, this is kind of where as we always joked, we always felt like we just had hurdles, right? We'd get moving, there'd be a roadblock, and we'd be like, this project's dead. I don't know how many times me and Shannon sat there and said, well, that's it, right? Well, it seemed like every time we had a roadblock, something would happen that would push us through, and we'd keep moving on it. Well, one of our biggest transformational moments is we was able to have one of our VCP, Veterans Community Project co-founders, came to the city to speak at a housing summit that our housing department was putting together. And one of the big things with that is our housing manager at the time let us sit down with him for lunch and kind of pick his brain on how do we do this in Sioux Falls, how do we help our homeless veterans, and really that's where the idea came. Maybe we partner with Veterans Community Project, right? Maybe they're the ones that can help us get over this hump. And so it was just something that came out of the blue. We never expected it to happen. And then we, like I said, we discussed the feasibility with him. Can this work in Sioux Falls? Obviously, with them in Kansas City, one of the great things with our village, and Eric's learning this too with them, is obviously not everything went right away, right? You're doing stuff, you're building these houses, and so we got to pick his brain with a bunch of lessons learned that they had. We needed more parking spaces because a lot of the homeless veterans, their cars, their only asset. So we were able to just get some of those things and some of the to make it more effective here in Sioux Falls. And then that's kind of where we kind of went from a feasibility study, to be honest with you, just the idea of this could work in Sioux Falls, where we started hounding Veterans Community Project for about 2 years to see if we could actually partner with them. As you'll see future in the future slides that Eric will go through, their expansion plans and where they are currently are cities of over millions of people, right? A couple million people in each one of these sites that they're located. So bringing them into Sioux Falls at a town that's 200,000, obviously it was a little difficult to get them to come here. Once they came here, you know, as we always do in Sioux Falls, we sold Sioux Falls and it was easy for them to come. They found the need, and so then we decided we're going to partner with VCP. We started moving forward on the actual, what is the city role? How do we help Veterans Community Project come here the fastest? Get their boots on the ground, figure out what they need so they can start going vertical. And these are the items that they pretty much ran down for us, their co-founders. They said, here's what we need, and we can come to Sioux Falls fast. They need a supportive administration. Our mayor and our administration was 100% behind this, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that we were in the Onward program. So they really let us run with this and make decisions and really not have to check in and micromanage with them. They were very supportive. The council was very supportive also. Proposed site. We had to find land like we talked about because Eric can't build houses on nothing, right, or in the middle of a street. Infrastructure. This is one of the biggest things that they learned in Kansas City. They got this land in 5 acres in Kansas City, didn't have sewer to it. So I think it was, $800,000 to run sewer that they didn't know about. So that was one of the other lessons learned, right? They're like, well, we need infrastructure there. We need water, sewer, roads, so we can just start going vertical. And they know that it's a lot harder to raise money for something that's in the ground than being able to raise money for a house. So that was the other thing that we worked on, is trying to get infrastructure there. And then the community support, which Eric will talk a little bit about it. I think we've been very supportive. It's been very easy to raise the money that they needed to start going vertical for these. And then the city council approval, which they unanimously approved to be able to gift this site to Eric and VCP, Veterans Community Project. So I'm going to get this over to Shannon now. He's going to talk about the site and then some of the infrastructure stuff that we paid for, the city's involvement with it, and really why we chose this site and why we wanted it in this location. So.
All right, good morning. I'm Shannon Verhey, and I'm one of the assistant city engineers for the engineering division, and I'm just going to talk through some logistics of bringing VCP here and how we got them a site ready, and want to get everybody acclimated with the location where they're at. And it's maybe a little hard to see on there, but if everybody knows where the Axtell School Park or the Axtell School site is, the old Axtell School, right north of there was some vacant property. So that's what that red box is there. There was a overgrown vacant lot that was, well, it wasn't vacant, overgrown with trees, and it was actually owned by a gentleman out of North Dakota. And I think there was some plans 20, 30 years ago to develop it, but there was a lot of challenges with that site. There was no sewer availability, there was some limited water availability there, and it just wasn't a very good site. So that's probably why it sat undeveloped for all these years. So one of the things that we did is this a feasible site? Well, from a location standpoint, just for the VCP group, you know, does it have access to a bus route? So it kind of checked that box off. Does it have access to like a laundry? Well, I know there's a laundry near 6th and West there. It also has some, if everybody's familiar with the Alliance, where the VFW and Legion, they've combined forces and moved there at the corner of West and Russell Street. There's some connection there. You're fairly close to the VA. You're a mile from the VA. So from a site perspective, as far as location, it was a great site. Then we had to have a willing buyer, or a willing seller to sell us the site. And we actually used some federal housing money to purchase the site from this gentleman. I think that was right around $250,000 for that site. We were also able to do some engineering projects, again, using some other grant money that we had access to, where we could upgrade the roadway, and I'll show some pictures here in a minute of that, where we did a roadway project where it was just a gravel road that was in front of this site. We were able to upgrade the water main to current standards, and probably the most important thing we did is install a sanitary sewer in front of the property. And we had some very, very willing adjoining property owners. We actually, on the east side of this, a private landowner gave us an easement to put a sewer line through their property and connect to a lift station, which that was kind of one of the linchpins as far as utilities go. So, and then again, we've had a very, kind of the other part about, VCP, they needed infrastructure, they needed land, but you also have to have not only political support, but you have to have that local community support. We had very supportive landowners. We didn't have the NIMBYs, the not in my backyards. They were actually, they've looked across their street for many years and seen a, overgrown lot, and they had a gravel road in front of their property, and, they've seen what the mission of what VCP was, and they're like, yeah, we're supportive of this. So for us to be able to kind of have, any one of those things that I described were kind of deal breakers. If we had a property owner that said, no, we don't want to sell to you, project would have just died. If we weren't able to bring the utilities in, the project would have just died. If we had a bunch of people at city council going, no, we don't want those kind of people in our neighborhood. VCP did a lot of outreach to show what their mission was all about, and again, we got the neighbors engaged. Again, I kind of jumped ahead here a little bit with some of the items. This is just a picture of what the roadway looked like. This is looking from to the north, so you're basically, just behind you is the Axtell Park track, the old school track, so you're looking to the north here. And where all those trees are on the upper left side, that's the lot that was gifted to VCP. Another picture of the roadway there. And then this is just a plan view of the project that we did, where we were able to construct one block of street there, as well as the water and sewer. So we just definitely were able to put the infrastructure in place there. And again, we purchased 1.86 acres and gifted that to VCP. We constructed the water, sewer, roadway, asphalt roadway. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
Thanks. So, Shannon covered a lot of things. Did you turn off your microphone? So, sat on it. Can you hear me now? I think so. Can you hear me now? All right, here we go. All right, so that property that Shannon was talking about is really key for a lot of the reasons he talked about. But the exciting part is what that land represented, because what isn't talked about is that property was not only not being used, but was a bit of a problem for the neighborhood. While cleaning out the land, there was a path that people could drive and park back in there. So it became popular for young folks to park back in there. We found a lot of trash that, some folks were having a good time back there, as well as a number of needles. And the remains further back in the lot, the remains of an abandoned homeless camp. So it's kind of appropriate that this will continue to help those individuals. Don't worry, we did not displace that homeless camp. They had not been using it for at least a year. It had gone untouched through the winter, so we know nobody had been using it recently. On that piece of property, this photo was taken on June 30th of this summer. My first day on this job was June 1st. We broke ground June 30th. I love this photo because of the look on Jason's face right there. This is groundbreaking. The young man next to me, that's my son Truman. He is 6. He is our #1 volunteer. So the exciting thing about this groundbreaking is it was the largest groundbreaking in the history of our city. There was some guesstimates on numbers of people by the mayor and by the community foundation that helped us do our groundbreaking. We did some checking, and we exceeded the number of attendance of any groundbreaking ever in the history of this town by quite a bit. The lot, that treed lot, had a clearing in it that we cleaned up for the groundbreaking and pulled this trailer that is a model house into. And then our friends from the city street department came down with a road grader and helped us turn the ground over because it's pretty hard, so we could do our groundbreaking. All right, so here's our property. If you can see, that street is Willow. This image, the drone is over the neighboring apartment complex's parking lot. So those two curb cuts are our parking lot inlets. So our property goes back up here. That is a drainage ditch. These apartments are our back neighbors, and then the property cuts off about where that front end loader is. So it's a big piece, 1.86 acres. Next to it is 3 small plots that will be used for single-family houses that aren't ours. And across the street is the neighbors that have become some of my favorite people. One of them, he calls me every time something's going on that isn't okay. He's Army vet, great guy. So this is what the property looks like now, or did late this summer. This is Kaylin. She's employee number 2. She's a community engagement coordinator. If you ever want to come volunteer, she's the one that will sign you up and put you to work. So as you can see, these things I learned go in the ground, and this is where utilities and water mains and stuff, did I get that right? So, yep, there we Sewer underground infrastructure. Houses have to be built. So over the course of the summer, we graded the land, put in the underground stuff, and paved our first 5 houses, foundations, and cement pads. Our first 5 houses are the ones on the far north end of the lot. They are all 5 family units. Our village will be made up of 25 tiny houses, 10 of which are for families. So we started on the north end. That row of 5 is all family units, including 2 of those 5 are for ADA qualified individuals. So they're large enough for a wheelchair and other adaptive equipment. So now that's done. This fall, we started building walls. And you can see this picture is a group of young people at Harrisburg High School. All of our framed walls were done in Harrisburg at the school. They have a building program in a partnership with the South Dakota, gosh, I'm blanking. All right, so they build houses there, they build things. It's a giant facility. They built all of our framed walls. And then they were loaded on a trailer and driven down to the site and unloaded and put up. It's a very exciting partnership. These kids threw these together in a matter of weeks, and it's amazing craftsmanship. The foreman who is putting them together on site is very impressed and wished his guys did that quality of work on their first day. So a little comparison. That's the picture in July after groundbreaking, but before we really did anything. And that photo down there was taken about 3 weeks ago. That there is house 1 and 2. They are come together. And fun little piece of information, the first time I've told anybody this, but all 5 houses now look like house 1 in this photo. They are all walled, they all have trusses, and they all have roofs. They are all legal structures according to our insurance company. And here's a photo taken this last week. They love the snow, which has been one of our biggest enemies this year. Our general contractor and our operations coordinator spend almost most of their time not building, but moving snow around so that the framers can access the things they need. I'm standing on Willow Avenue in this photo. Right there is our first our first parking lot curb cut that you saw in the earlier photo. And then to the right is continuing down Willow Avenue to the north, and there's our first 5 houses, the north row of 5. And then in the far right side there is our job trailer, which is our current office on site. It was donated by a construction company. It smells funny, but we've got it clean, so we're good now. There's power. It's heated, and we'll have internet in a week or two, so we'll have full operations on site at all times. So there's all 5 of those beauties. As you can see, they all look a little different. Our goal is to not make it look like we went down to Home Depot and bought a bunch of garden sheds and lined them up. So every house is a little different in the row. The only reason house 1 and 2 look the same is because they're both the ADA model. There's 4 different models in the family units, and you can see all 4 different varieties there. Our goal is to make them look different, make them be homes, make them be unique. Each model is named after a war hero, as chosen by Ben, the guy who almost ran somebody over with a skid loader earlier in my story. But we're very proud of the varied models and the fact that all 5 houses, they're now working on finished carpentry inside, and we will have electric and water rough-ins in shortly to be prepared for our framing and other inspections from those from the city. Here's the inside of one of the units. This is house number 3, the KC model, the one with the big pitch. It's very tall, and it's been a fun little engineering thing. Our framers had never built a roof attachment like this, so it's been interesting learning model for everybody. And the high school kids, that's the great thing about working with high school students. They don't know what's normal. They don't know what's always been done. So they just looked at the plans and did it, and then the instructor's like, huh, that looks pretty good. And it worked. So the framed-in piece there to the right is the bathroom. The only interior wall is around the bathroom. The far left corner from the door is where the bed is. And then to the right is the kitchen. So between the bathroom and the front door is the kitchen. Here I am in the far corner where the bed is. So I'm standing where the pillow would be. Any questions about our design? So a single family residence or a single individual residence is 240 square feet. So about the size of a basketball key. A family residence is 320, and then the ADA is more than that to make it wider for the accommodation. Yes.
For economy of construction, why aren't those built as fourplexes instead of as singles?
So there's a few pieces of that. One is we want each individual to have their own space, their own home. Also, noise purposes. We want people to be able to fully decompress, and if you've ever lived in an apartment building, no matter how much sound insulation you put between the units, you can't do that. There's a few other pieces. If one needs to be brought offline, it doesn't affect the unit next to it. So it gives every house a little bit more autonomy. Plus, tiny houses are hip right now, and it helps with fundraising. So there's a lot of different reasons, but there's a few of them. And it was the idea that they came up with that worked, and so it works, so we're just going to keep doing it until it doesn't work no more.
How many windows do you have?
So the door is there. There's a window on the front, and then there's 2 windows on the one wall opposite the kitchen. The scale is a little screwy in this because I'm in a corner. All right. So here is a lovely little map. In the middle there is HQ, where the flag is, Kansas City, Missouri. All I'm sure can tell where Sioux Falls is. We're actually village number 4. So KC is number 1. Longmont, Colorado is number 2. It's a bedroom community outside Denver somewhere. I've never been there, but the pictures make it look beautiful. And then the one to the right there, the other one circled in green, is St. Louis. That village will have 50 houses. It'll be the largest village so far. They are village number 3. They have about 10 of them done, and they're about to have the ribbon cutting on their outreach center. Down in Oklahoma is Oklahoma City. They're still in early development. A piece of property has been identified, but we're still going through zoning and permitting and all that fun stuff there. Same in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That one's a little bit further ahead, but only because of timing of time slots we could get at council meetings. It's a fun little thing when you're doing something like we are. Most of these municipalities have no infrastructure or no law to govern building a tiny house. These are structures that aren't in our zoning and code until we come to town, so it's a little different. Here's our Longmont Village. It will be 26 tiny houses. Yes?
There's a, Yankton and the river, south of
Mhm.
Yankton on that road down to the river. There's a community of tiny houses. Is that you know what that is?
It's a vacation home, they're like cabins. They're all pre-manufactured and set. They're not legal houses, they're trailers.
Would you mind repeating questions?
Oh, sure.
You know,
I-
because it's straight.
I apologize. I usually am good about that. So Longmont here is 26 houses. I believe 5 of them will be family units. Their model is, that is their village center in the middle with all the houses around it. They're being built as part of a housing development and in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. So their general contractor is another nonprofit. Makes for an interesting workplace. So they'll have 20 individual homes, 6 families. Here they are. This is the crew in Longmont. They've been plugging away, and lucky for them, the weather in Colorado, yeah, it'll snow, but 3 days later it'll all be melted and they can continue to work. So every snowstorm only takes them down a couple days, where that doesn't happen here. This is St. Louis. This is massive. This fun little piece of information, trivia I learned this last week. The VCP Village in St. Louis has 3 different zip codes because of where it sits. That intersection, right up there, is where 3 different zip codes come together. So they didn't realize it until when they put in the address for a contractor to go to a house, the GPS would take them to the wrong place because every zip code is different. So there's that. So that, like I said, they're building that there. Their outreach center is almost complete. They'll have 40 individual homes and 10 family homes. So did y'all notice this ratio of individual homes to family? Varies at every site. This is done intentionally. One of our founders, his name is Vincent. He is a social worker by trade. Specializes in homeless veterans. He is our subject matter expert on this topic. He takes the information he can gather from the city and the VA and the federal government and every source, and he looks at the problem here in Sioux Falls. He looks at the demographics, he looks at the population, he looks at what information is known about the homeless population and specifically the homeless veteran population, and then figures out how many houses are needed for our community. How many to address the problem, to be sustainable for operations as well as funding. And after that's worked out, he then works out the ratio of family to single. Sioux Falls has the largest ratio of single-family houses. They're building 50 houses total in St. Louis, and only 10 of them are families, where 10 of our 25 is family units here in Sioux Falls. It kind of paints the picture of the need of what we are dealing with here in Sioux Falls. This is their outreach center. Like I said, it's about to open. Unless you're in the building industry, you don't realize that there's a shortage of one key component right now when you're trying to finish a building. It is a component that goes inside your electric box. I don't know what that part is, but it is in every power box, and you can't find them. The factory that builds those things and, well, takes those things and puts them into a power box, and other things they go in, is in St. Louis, down the street from the village. Adam, the executive director, has walked there and met the guy in charge of that factory, and he still can't get one. So they know where it's coming from. They know they're on the list. They're hoping soon, once that comes in, they can put it in, and they can go from temporary construction power to an actual legal certifiable electric box, and they can open their outreach center. Here is St. Louis. This is one of the ADA family houses they have there. They're a little further along. Like I said, they have 10 that are sided and shingled and drywalled, and they're all ready to go. They're just waiting on those electrical components. And the 2 sites that are in early development, Oklahoma City and Milwaukee. Our goal is to be in every city in America. Yes, sir.
So you will retain ownership of these, and then if they're eligible, they live there, correct?
Correct. Yep.
If they pass on, then
Yep. So VCP owns the property. It was given to us, the physical property was given to us by the city. There was a change of hands legally. Yep, all the dwellings stay under the ownership of the Veterans Community Project nonprofit of Sioux Falls. So there's a legal entity, LLC, lawyers, all that. Fun fact, our CEO currently is a lawyer, so that's done in-house, luckily. So this piece is done in such a way so it is ours. They are a tenant legally. All the property inside the house is property of VCP's until completion of the program. And then upon completion of the program, the goods inside the house becomes property of the resident and can leave with them. Not everybody takes all the stuff, obviously. If you're moving into an apartment, you don't need a refrigerator and a weird-shaped tiny stove. But some people take them because they're moving into a situation where that would be helpful for them. And we really focus in on everything being in the house new when a person moves in. So anything left behind goes to our warehouse and is held on to for emergency purposes or sale upon us having too much of it. Yes.
What's the duration of occupancy?
Ooh, good question. So the question is duration of occupancy. So we have no set limit. We have no guidelines on those. Like I said earlier, those 5 pillars guide what we do. The case management plan for each individual is worked out with our case management staff with input from the individual. There's nothing in that plan that they didn't choose to be in that plan. We guide those conversations, obviously, and hold them accountable to those things. But part of that is they move out when they've completed their plan. The average stay at the Kansas City Village is between 10 and 14 months. So about a year. Fun little piece of information. No resident has ever lived in the KC Village for a full 2 years. We measure that very closely. Fun little fact, if you are a transitional housing program, if you have a resident that stays there more than 2 years, you're no longer a transitional housing program, you're just a housing program. So we track that. It's not saying we wouldn't get creative if somebody needed to stay with us longer. We'll figure it out, like that's just kind of what we do. But that's one of those things where nobody's ever been there that long. And the average is about a year, about 12 months. Yes?
Do the residents pay any rent or utilities or?
Yep. So the question is, do the residents have bills while they reside with us? Do they help pay rent or utilities? And the answer is no. All we require of our residents is to follow their case plan. As long as they're making progress on their plan, great. We want them to put all of their effort, I mean all of their effort, into making those milestones, addressing what got them there, the root causes of their issue. We don't want them to have to worry about survival in any way and have to worry about rent or food or anything. Like, we want them to worry about them at the most basic level. Because if we've learned that if we can get them just to focus on that plan, they'll accomplish that plan at a higher success rate and much quicker as some other programs that have work requirements or other different measurements that are part of their programs. We stick to the plan, and what is expected of each individual is what's written in their plan.
Eric, do you have a projection for when these first 10 houses might be completed so people can move in?
So the question is, when are we going to be ready for people to move in? I wish I knew. We were really hoping to have this first 5 houses up and running by now, but we ran into some problems, most notably the weather. The first 5 houses are under construction currently and will be completed to the point where we can start working on the inside, prepping them for residents over the next few months. We're hoping for an open house sometime in March, April timeframe, probably March. One thing that will hold us up is water and sewer were brought to within 5 feet of the pad, and then works began. So all the interior plumbing is done, or will be done, and all the underground is done, but they're not connected yet. And if it had snowed a week later, they would have been. So we will not get a conditional usage permit from the city without running water, and nor would we ask for one, because there's a lot of things you can work around, but running water and sewer isn't one of them. So a couple weeks after the frost comes out, we'll probably be able to open those first 5. The remainder of the 25 will be brought online over the course of the summer. Any other questions? Yes.
I missed some of the first part. Are your houses all paid for? Are you looking for sponsors for some of the houses?
I'm going to end with funding, so I'll end with funding, so I'll do that at the end all together. So before we get into how this all works financially, anybody have any other questions about programming, or yes?
So I happen to know who's building the first 5, and you contracted with them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's questions about how the next 20 are going to get built.
Mhm.
Is that going to be let out on bids, or are you hoping to get people to volunteer to do them, or what's the plan?
So the plan is all of the above, actually. So the question was, we have a contractor that's building our first 5 houses, how the rest of the process will work. So the whole project, we have a general contractor called WS Construction, who's been an amazing partner that oversees the big everything. And then they sub out pieces. Right now, we have a framing subcontractor on site doing the framing. How that will work going forward will be different than it is now, because obviously in the snow, I don't want volunteers on ladders building. That's just not safe. We need professionals doing that. It's a very different thing. Once spring starts and the concrete pads will go in for the remaining, it will be a hybrid of contract professionals who are under contract and paid. There's an agreement between our general contractor and them for a fee of some kind. A lot of those are being donated or discounted, but there's a legal agreement there. Others are volunteer people totally on their own time and dime that are there as a volunteer, and there's a volunteer agreement between them as an individual and us. And then the third way is straight up volunteers. So this will all meld together in a very strange way that is very unique, especially for Sioux Falls. This is even more different than how Habitat does it. So the answer is all of the above. There will be a general contractor and professionals on site doing things, but our staff and our volunteers will pull as much work off of their plates as possible to be done by our volunteers. Because we're armed by the community, we're built by the community, and those volunteers are what not only helps save us money on paying professionals to do things, but also helps them have that blood, sweat, and tears as part of that project. All right, any other questions? All right, so funding, how does that all work? So we accept 0 public dollars. The closest we've ever come to that is the thing Jason was describing earlier, where Federal grants were given to the city, and the city did some work on the project. That's the closest we've ever come to taking public funding. Luckily, it went through the city, and the city didn't have any strings, so it was okay. We do that intentionally. Like I said earlier, we are opposite of the VA. The VA has rules. Does anybody know that not every person who serves in the armed forces, they do not qualify for VA care? Yeah. So, in order to qualify for VA care, you have to have an honorable discharge, have a certain amount of time in service, and a number of other measurements. So if you were kicked out of the Army for disciplinary problems that were likely a byproduct of your post-traumatic stress, guess what? You now don't qualify for VA care. Or if you're a guardsman or reservist who was just shy of the number of days that they were activated or didn't get the right campaign medals while deployed, you don't qualify for VA care. So we don't accept federal funding because if we do, we would have to follow those same stipulations that the VA does. That's just kind of the way it works. So we serve all veterans, regardless of status, regardless of background. If they served one day, they are my brother, they are my sister, I will care for them. It gets tricky sometimes because like we can't just bring them to the VA if they have a dishonorable discharge. We have programs and partners that can help upgrade those discharges, but we are entirely privately funded. Most of that is through corporate donations, corporate foundations, other community supporters, and individual giving. So the way phase one fundraising, which happened prior to my hire, was done by a group of city leaders, corporate types, that came together and helped raise the money to meet the need that was identified. So VCP basically told them we need this much money to do this, and they went and raised it. One of those things was house sponsorships. For a company or an individual to sponsor a tiny house, it costs $50,000. When this whole process started 2 years ago, that $50,000 would have been enough to build the house and to run it for the first year. Guess how much it costs to build a house right now? Any guesses? It's atrocious. It's $65,000 to build it. We've been able to offset that with in-kind donations. So construction suppliers are donating lumber and cabinets and stuff. So we're able to get that amount down. So to answer your question, all 25 of our houses have sponsors. But that doesn't mean everything's paid for. Because everything's costing more, we now have additional costs. Like that sponsorship isn't going to run the house for the first year, it's just going to build it. So now we need additional operating dollars. So we've been doing that through generous support of other individuals, other corporations, individual giving, and donation of time, treasure, and supplies. We're doing okay, but we do have operational needs, as well as getting volunteers engaged to help. For example, right now, our big push is to get people to sign up to be a volunteer and to help furnish a house. So we know that our first 5 houses will be able to put the finishings and stuff in them in the next few months. So we're trying to get those things. So if anybody wants to get involved as a volunteer, to donate supplies, or to donate funds, you can find all that at vcp.org. Go to the Sioux Falls tab. There's all the links. Also, if you use Facebook, our Facebook page is very well updated. You'll see photos and videos of what's going on, ask for specific things we need, ways to get involved. Kaylin, who you saw earlier, she's 22 years old. She's very good at social media, and she helps engage our community on how to get involved. I also have brochures and cards up here if anybody needs the website. But that's kind of where we are right now. Phase 1 fundraising got us to where we are. We're doing operational funding right now. We're also fundraising a little capital campaign on some of those images you saw. There's a thing at the end of the parking lot that looks like a big garage. That's our volunteer hub. We haven't fundraised for that yet, so we got to pay for that somehow. So we're looking for corporate sponsors to sponsor different pieces of the building, as well as somebody, if they want to slap their name on the side of that thing, we'll gladly take their money. So if you want to get involved in any way, there's a lot of opportunities too, because like our mission statement says, we're armed with support of the community to do what we do. And that's really where we need help right now. So any other questions? Gentlemen, anything to add? No? All right, we'll be around afterwards. If you have any questions, hit us up. Like I said, I have brochures and cards if you'd like more information, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. This was so interesting and so good to hear, and I'm so proud of Sioux Falls. And I'm reading this book called City of Hustle right now. Some of you have probably read it. And it just shows what a city of hustle we are, because we're a small community compared to these other places that have done this. So it's just wonderful. Jean, did you want to make an announcement about next Sunday?
Yeah, please come next week. We are having Jerry Fogg, who's a Native American artist. And we were interested in exploring Native spirituality